Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents The Corner Bookstore, hosted by Red O'Loughlin. Step into a world where every story inspires. These pages come to life through the voices of authors from around the globe. Written by our global community of TV show hosts and best-selling authors, these works span genres, generations, and geographies, united by the power of storytelling. Discover your next favorite book and meet the minds behind the work. Thursdays, only on USA Global TV and Radio.
Howdy, I'm Red O'Loughlin. This is the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. I'm a writer and an author also, but primarily I'm a researcher. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat symptoms and you'll always be treating symptoms. However, the cause may continue to get worse. And so that's what I research, that's what I write about, that's what I speak about. I also publish books. I've published all of my own, 6 right now, and I have 2 more that are in writing, and I have probably done almost 50 books for other authors. And when I'm not doing that in my retired state that I'm in, I enjoy all sorts of things, but one of the best things that happens every week is I do 3 live streaming TV shows here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And this is the first of 3 today, the Corner Bookstore. Next will be the Wise Ones, and after that it's going to be Talking Heads. So that's my intro for today. Let's get to our first and only guest today, and that's Jennifer Shaw. Jennifer has written the Callum Walker series, and she's been on USA Global TV and Radio Network before. So please welcome back, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me back.
You have an interesting story because your story as a writer is different than most. And not that it was self-inflicted, but it's something that you discovered over time and adjusted, tweaked, and managed to overcome. And then lo and behold, it kind of pops up in the family down the road. So why don't you give the audience a brief history of what we're talking about so they have it right from the horse's mouth, so to say.
Yeah, so I wrote for 35 plus years. I'm still writing, and I had never shared anything. It started as a hobby and like an outlet, a hobby, passion, obsession. Now it's just cheaper than therapy. But it wasn't until 2019 I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And I thought, well, maybe writing is my special interest. I kind of live vicariously through my characters. I lived out emotional traumas and social awkwardness through my characters to try to understand it. And in 2019, when I was diagnosed, it was after my sons were diagnosed. I sent my first manuscript for the series off to an editor thinking the worst they can say is it sucks. And they came back and they said, this doesn't suck. You should publish. So 2 years later, I did.
Now, you talk about being on the spectrum. I think that's the terminology is being used. Could you tell us a little bit about what that spectrum is?
So there's certain criteria you have to meet, and everybody presents differently in each one of those. Maybe some people with autism are more severe in the social communications, and others are more severe in like the behavioral issues and stuff. But as long as you meet all these criteria, you fit in. I did a lot of stimming behaviors when I was a kid, and I still do, where I will, click or, wiggle my fingers. Don't give me a pen that has a clicky pen lid because I will drive everybody crazy. Whereas my oldest boy has more trouble with the social communication, and he didn't know how to talk to kids, and he'd go up to the park and he would just go and stand right in front of a kid, like he wants a conversation to happen, but he doesn't know how to initiate it. So I had to develop a script for him to follow. And then my younger one is more on the behavioral issue. He's more OCD, more controlling. Things have to be done a certain way. And if they don't, the world's falling apart. But he still meets all the other criterias. And so does both my sons as well as myself.
Jennifer, you told me a really cute story backstage just before we started about your two little boys. Yes. The youngest one being 5, and they were talking about I'm the better brother. Could you relate that story to the audience? Because I think that is just so neat.
Yeah. So a few years back, my two boys, my youngest was 5 at the time. My oldest was 7, and they were in their bedroom and they were having an argument about who was the better brother. And they're going back and forth. I'm listening through the door. I'm like, I want to see how this plays out. But they're going back and forth like, well, I can do this. Well, I can do that. Well, I can do this. Here's my little guy, 5 years old. And he says, well, you didn't become a brother until I was born. I made us both brothers. That makes me the better brother, which I'm not sure where he got that logic from.
Strange things come from strange places, and we never know. But anyway, I'm bowled over by that. That's a really neat story.
Yeah, well, he's always been that. My mother-in-law calls him an old man in a little boy's body.
Oh, okay. So you're writing, and you started out. You said you've been writing for quite a long time. The series Callum Walker. Mm-hmm. Tell us about how the genesis of that. What do you read ahead of time? Is I really want to be in the supernatural world. Kind of give us a little background into how that developed.
I was actually, the idea for this came about when I was watching a Netflix series called Merlin. And it was it's the series called Young Merlin before he became Merlin the magician, and he's kind of hiding his abilities and trying to help out and stuff before he becomes the this famous character of lore. But I just remember watching that as like, oh, I have an idea. And I started with a question of what if fairy tales were more than stories, monsters are real? We just didn't know it. And I kind of ran with that. It wasn't my intention to write a big magical fantasy series, but I've written in sci-fi, I've written in horror, thriller, all the different genres. But the only thing I don't write is I don't write history because I fall asleep, and I don't write mystery because I'm not smart enough to figure out whodunits. And although I have elements of romance, I don't write spicy romance. There's no bedroom scenes in any of my books.
Okay. So how long did it take you to write the first book in the Callum series?
The rough draft took me about 2 months.
Oh, wow.
For the first book. Then I was on a roll. So the second book's rough draft took me about 2.5 weeks. But anywhere from like the 2.5 week mark to about four months for a rough draft. But editing takes at least 3 times that.
Well, tell us about your first bout with editing.
Yes. So, I mean, finding a good editor is really hard. I'm trying to find, I searched for an editor who was not just going to look at my books and make them look better, but who's going to teach me how to become a better writer as well. So it was a little bit more challenging. And I went through a few different editors. I think I had to fire a couple of them because they were taking a year. One of my editors who was really good, she ended up passing away. But there's a lot of editors out there who are not really editors per se. They just posing as editors and stuff. So I have to really be careful where I look for them now. And there's certain companies in Canada, they have the Canadian Guild of Editors or Canadian Editors, something like that. I found them through the Alexandra Writing Society. Okay.
Now, in the editing we're talking about here, I write nonfiction. So to me, it's more syntax, diction, capitalization, grammar. that's not the same thing you're talking about, because you have a story, you have characters, you have location, you have time, you have all sorts of plots that are going on. And so
Mhm.
that is different. And when you're talking about, I want to be a better writer, and the editor's there saying, uh, this is wrong, you don't take it personally because you want to be a better writer.
Mhm.
So you got
Yes.
to find that right balance between somebody who's overbearingly, uh, this is the correct way of doing it. And I work
Yes.
with some editors sometimes who have, they're absolutely correct in what they're doing, but idiomatically they're not correct in the context of the character or the verbiage they choose to get a point across. And so
Yes.
sometimes they go on the other side of being really good editors. And so it's kind of a really hard choice to make. And so when you find a good one, you hang on to them, right?
Yes. Yeah. And there's multiple levels of editing as well. I don't know about the nonfiction route, but there's areas to learn. There's you'd probably, it would be best to start with a developmental edit, which kind of takes a step back and looks at the plot, the character development, the dialogue, the flow of the story. Are there any open, gaping plot holes and stuff like that? That's a developmental edit, and that's more in depth. And then once that's done, you would look at um, the copy line edit, which is like looking at line per line. Are my commas in the right place? Are there any punctuations out of joint? Dot your I's, cross your T's. Everything looks good as far as that goes. And then you do a proofread, and then you get people to do a beta read, and and then it never fails. You submit it to publishing, and then you find out, oh, there's still a typo.
That's amazing how those typos just magically appear.
They don't
But,
appear before publishing. It's once they're published, that's when they appear.
yeah. But well, they breed and then they finally grow up big enough to be seen. That's what's
It's
going
like rocks under the snow.
on. So you have your editing, and one of the things I do, and I kind of bypass a few of these things. I'll have a couple nights, and I'll invite people over. So I have individuals or couples come by. And we'll have a dessert and wine, and sit around and chit chat for a short while, and then the next hour and a half, I give random chapters in a clipboard and a red pen, and please tell me anything that you don't understand. So I have a chance to get some feedback right away. And
Yes.
one of the most interesting things that happened to me was, uh, the guy wrote on there too many ifs. And okay, he says, this should be a win. This should, and I went back through that. I think I had 80 some odd ifs in that particular book. And when I went back, I literally changed about 80 of them to when this happens, because the if is the default in my brain. It's the way I think and write. But in the context of the situation, it's when this occurs, do this, not if this occurs, do this, because it's a different context. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of things, in English, the word that, that's
Yeah.
most of the time we don't need it, but sometimes we do. So it sort of depends. But as you're going through there and you're developing a relationship with your editor,
Mhm.
there's a lot going back and forth. So when you're reading, and two-part question, what do you like to read? And do you pick up the little nuances on how they introduce the characters and the locations and everything?
Yes, I when I started writing, it was because I couldn't find things that I like to read. But now, as I've gotten out and done more book signings, my to be read list has grown because people keep recommending stuff to me. So now my list is really big. But kind of the things that I like to read are like Lord of the Rings trilogy. I loved that. I'm a big fan of Game of Thrones. I've just recently discovered Brandon Sanderson, and yes, I do pay attention to how they introduce people, whether or not they're using metaphors, how many similes do they like. I have a bad habit of overusing adjectives. I got a comment one time in my thing. It's like, my editor said, there are 5 adjectives for this one noun. Can you please limit it to 2 max? So, and I mean, I've grown since then. I don't use 5 adjectives, but I'm trying to learn what other people do, not so I can copy them, but so I can see, okay, how am I doing compared to what they're doing, and how can I improve? So it's all just it's and I know they're a good writer when I'm reading through their stuff and I don't even notice that they've written that way. I'm just like, I'm just invested in the story.
Yeah. I've had two occasions where I've been reading something and the author killed off one of the main characters. And I had to stop and go back and literally reread that paragraph twice.
Mhm.
Yeah, and he really did kill it. And I couldn't figure out why, because everything was just going so, okay.
Yeah, comes out
And
of
it happened literally as fast as being struck in the neck by a rattlesnake that
Mhm.
we didn't even know the rattlesnake was there. Uh,
Yep.
just okay. And it's interesting
Yes.
how they can really grab a hold of our brains and lead us right on. And as you're saying, you're there to try to develop some of those same skills, and when you see it in others, you
Mhm.
recognize it, and that's great.
Yeah.
What do you really love about writing, and what is kind of a little not so happy, but you got to do it anyway?
Well, the not so happy part is the editing. It's torturous at times, because you're tearing apart your project that you've done. You've invested time and energy into this, and you feel like you're just tearing it apart. And you get it back from your editor, and there's like so many red lines, and you're just like, I thought I was doing better. But then you see that, oh, what they're taking out is just extra fluff. And to me, it's like magic when they take out like one or two words and it completely changes the sentence. I'm just like, wow, teach me your magic. But some of the things I really enjoy is I just enjoy that, creative freedom. When I'm writing, I see it as a movie in my head. And when I really get into the zone, I really appreciate that because my imagination just flows and my story goes off on its own direction. It's like it's writing itself. And I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. I got this thing here and they're in this situation. Oh, okay, let's go there. It's like this spark of inspiration. And it'll take me to places and I'll have some of the best scenes. But then in other times it's scary because it'll take me places and I have to stop and question my sanity. Like, that came out of me. What am I thinking? What's going on with me? Yeah. So it's just always interesting to see where it's going to go.
What have you noticed has been really challenging in writing this series?
Challenging, I'd say probably dividing my time between my family and my writing. My kids are out for the summer now, so there's obviously going to be a lot less writing that's going to happen. But when my kids are in school, I'll hurry through my chores and sit down and then I have no problems. It's the external distractions that really interfere and make it difficult to write.
You think either one of your two boys will end up being a writer?
Oh goodness, I hope so. I mean, they both like to read, so I'm hoping that one of them eventually becomes a writer. They both read my books. They skip through some of the slower parts, and they're just like, I want to find that fighting scene. Where is that fighting scene where they were fighting that monster? And so I'm leaving them a legacy, is what I'm thinking.
Well, we talked about editing. I'd like to get in a couple other areas before we go to break here in about a minute and a half. Let's talk briefly about marketing. When did you start marketing that first book?
Not right away, because I don't know, like, I'm a mom. I don't know anything about marketing. In fact, the word marketing is terrifying to me because I don't know what it means. So the first thing I think I did is I decided I'm not going to call it marketing. I'm going to call it showing the world I exist. It sounds a lot friendlier and it's a lot more fun. And then once I did that shift and I'm starting thinking in that mindset, I started to do, and I think this was around 2023. So I started to do more book signings. I started to do more social media posts. I've got Facebook and Instagram. And then this past year, I've been working with a publicist who has kind of, given me more advice and allowed me to reach a larger audience to just share my passion. But I'm trying to build and trying to think of ideas and stuff. And I'm also looking at what other people do as well.
And now your publicist is Mickey Mickelson, Creative
Yes.
Edge. Yeah.
Yep.
Really neat guy. We get a lot of his authors here on our shows. So anyway, we're getting real close to a break, a commercial break. So with that being said, let's come back after the break and we'll talk about your cover art and the titles of your books. And so with that, let's go ahead and start our commercial break.
Ever dreamed of hosting your own TV show, sharing your story with a global audience? Now's your chance to shine. At USA Global TV and Radio, we make it easy for you to create, host and broadcast your very own TV show. Whether you're a storyteller, entrepreneur, or industry expert, we help you bring your vision to life. With our exclusive interview, live streaming, and podcasting training, you'll gain the skills and confidence to captivate your audience. Our global platform ensures your voice is heard worldwide. Join our community of creators who are already making an impact, one show at a time. Step into the spotlight. Host your own TV show on USA Global TV and Radio. Book your discovery call today at usaglobaltv.com. Copyright 2025 USA Global TV and Radio. All rights reserved. Terms and conditions apply. To learn more, visit usaglobaltv.com.
Howdy, y'all. Red O'Loughlin here on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And today my guest is Jennifer Shaw. She's the author of the Jacalyn Walker series. Jennifer, please join me back up here on stage. Welcome back. Anyway, let's get into the cover art, and maybe I can pull up your, yeah, there we go. She's already ahead of me, our production engineer. The Jacalyn Walker series. Okay. Why the word Jacalyn? Why the choice of name Jacalyn Walker is the first one, and then the cover art, the coloring, the background. Give us a little bit of background about that.
Yeah, so the name, actually, I've had a lot of people ask me how I came up with the name. The last name is easy, Walker. He's on a journey, so walking, right? But the first name was actually a list of baby names. It was a name that I really liked. My family is kind of they've Irish Scottish, so it was a very strong name in my mind. But my husband didn't like it, so we went with Morgan and we went with Avery. But I really liked the name Callum, so I kept the name and my mind, and I created a character out of this name. As far as the cover art, I like that idea of, the mystery where they're heading into something, they're journeying somewhere, and it fits along with the theme of adventure and going into the unknown. So as far as so that's why we have them heading towards something. As far as the color scheme, the first one wasn't decided for me. I just thought, hey, that's a cool color. I like that. The second one, lots of greenery because he's spending a lot of time in the forest. I wasn't so sure about the color for the third one, but somebody recommended to me like a red or a burnt orange or kind of, that kind of thing. And then the fourth one, violet, is my favorite color. So of course I had to have that included in there somewhere.
And how long did it take you to get the covers done?
The covers, getting the covers done wasn't a huge process. I found somebody on Fiverr. I was recommended them. They were able to do the cover art for me. Making little tweaks here and there is what takes the most.
Yeah, for me, publishing cover is probably the biggest time concern I have, because if there's something in there and I'm dealing with somebody at Fiverr, I use a lot.
Yes.
And I'm dealing with somebody 12 time zones away. It takes literally 72 hours to communicate, get something done, get something back. By the time you do that now, okay, it's 3 days later, and it's perpetuating itself. So it's an interesting part of being an author, is to get that part done. So I try to tell people, I usually go out and I get 5 covers done, and I put them on social media. And I say A or B, B or C, C or D.
Let your audience decide. Yeah.
And that way it gives me something really quick and easy up front that I can work with, that I can use to market. And now all I have to do is, okay, I got 272 pages. I tell them that here's my backstory, and there I can get the rest of the book done.
Yes.
You talked about movies earlier. Have you considered doing any kind of video trailers for your movies?
I don't even know where to reach out for that. I've seen other people doing that. I'm not very technical minded, and I know I've had a lot of people asking about audiobooks too. And it's I have to research everything and figure out where do I go and how do I do this. And so it's a huge process. But I am looking into creating more digital feeds, like kind of, or even just chapter scenes, like images that would represent that chapter.
Okay. Just for information on the Fiverr, they do have people who will do video trailers.
Mhm.
So that might be an option to
That's one
consider
of the
too.
places I'm looking, yeah.
So audio, we talked briefly about. How about foreign languages?
I don't know how Amazon does it because they're available in other countries that don't necessarily have English as their main language. So I don't know if Amazon translates it or what. I haven't gone to these other countries and tried to order it from there.
No, and in fact, it's one of those things I've been looking at for a while, and I've had people approach me from LinkedIn saying I do this, but the
Mhm.
prices are just so steep. But
Yes.
the other day, just, okay, fine, let me just check it out because I wasn't sure what other services Fiverr does, but they have expert. If I want my book in Portuguese, this guy has
Yes.
done 40 books already, and so and the prices weren't bad. They
Yeah.
really weren't. I was quite amazed. I said, well, that's something for me to consider. So whether it's Chinese or Portuguese or German or something else, I have to figure out where does my book really fit into the world outside of the United States in English.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like you're gonna invest this time and energy in getting it printed in, I don't know, Spanish or French. If you don't have an audience there to read it, then it's kind of a waste, yeah.
Okay, one of the things you wanted to make sure we talked about today and is your new book. Uh, let's talk about that briefly. Where, when, why, etc. Tell the world.
Yeah, so my fourth book in the series, which was just released June 1st, is Forsaken Souls, and it's a continuation of my character's journey. There, he's continuing on to try to fix the veil that he feels responsible for having damaged, even though it was necessary. And he kind of gets entangled in this war that's happening between the northern elves and the northern kingdom and the Durgarin, who are inhabiting the Iron Lands, which is south of the northern kingdom. And there's a history behind them, and there's a contentions brewing and a war going to like kind of stirring and stuff. But it's not going to be a typical war. They're looking for vengeance, and it's not lives or territory or power that they're after. They're out for souls.
So all the characters in your book speak English very well.
Mm-hmm. Well as I do.
Do you ever get feedback from any of your readers?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Most of it's pretty positive. A lot of my readers say that when they're reading my action scenes or some of my very visual scenes and stuff, they can see it in their head. And I'm like, oh, good. Phew. Because when I'm writing it, I'm seeing it in my head. I'm just writing down what I see. But I know that a lot of people have said my dialogue feels like they can tell who's speaking just based on my dialogue. And then every now and then I'll get a comment where, I don't really, if it sounds like it's just an opinion-based thing, I don't really give it a lot of credence. Like, I think I had one person say they didn't like my book because they thought my main character was a loser. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really help me. When I get feedback that is something I can do, like, oh, there's a couple grammatical errors in this chapter, I can go and change those. If they felt that there was, if somebody says anything about, and not that this has happened, but there's areas in my story that drag or that they can't visualize, I can go and work on that. Or if there's areas like too many descriptions, or my dialogue feels chunky or something like that, those are things that I can work on, and so I give those a lot more credence.
Okay. It makes a lot of sense because we as authors generally don't have the opportunity to hear back from our readers.
Yeah.
And so when you do have that, you're getting some probably pretty honest information, and something that, as you say, I can change that. I can make it happen better. How do you handle writer's block?
Oh, I try to just continue writing, even if it's only a sentence. Sometimes for me, it's a matter of trying to figure out what's causing the writing block. If it's a lot of stress, or I've got an extra workload, if I can work through that, if I can, if I'm stressed or I'm having a writer's block because my environment is messy, I can clean up. If I just need a break, I can take a break and then come back to it and stuff. But for me, it's a matter of figuring out what's causing the block in order to work on it. And then once I identify the cause, if I can fix it, that's great. If I can't, sometimes I just need to step aside and do a different project.
Okay. So sometimes just stepping out of the role of being an author into something else, you come back to it free.
Yes. Yeah.
Hemingway is one that I use quite a bit on this show and others when I talk to authors. That one of the best pieces of advice I ever read from him was, don't finish the story when you know the ending. You know the ending of a chapter. Just walk away from it because you already know how you're going to end it. He says
Yes.
that way when you come back, there's no writer's block because boom, you just go right straight into. And it says a lot of times you'll change it and actually give it so much thought it becomes a better ending than what you had. And
Yeah.
so I pass that on to others. And I was doing
Yes.
my slides last night for my show, the Talking Heads, and I got down to almost the end. I had 2, 3 slides left, and I mentioned to my wife, I said, I think I'm going to take that Hemingway approach. I said, I know what I want to do to end the thing, but I'm not going to go up there and just finish it. I'm just going to let it kind of percolate overnight. This 2 nights ago, and
Yep.
so I let it go and got back to it later on, and I kind of changed, literally changed how I wanted to do things. Rather than just wrap it up, walk away, thank you very much, end of story. I was
Mhm.
able to, okay, I feel more comfortable ending that presentation because it then slides into next week's presentation more easily rather than abruptly end here and have to start something next time. That
Yes.
sometimes my presentations are linked and they were originally, they were all a series of 4, 6, or 8 weeks, but nowadays are pretty much a single title, although uh, the last week, this week, and next week are all very, very similar in that. But anyway, getting back to you, we don't want to take that away. Um, what advice would you give to new authors? Just okay, I'd like to write a book. How would you talk to them? What would you tell them?
Oh, about the writing process? A lot of people like, and I know I was of the same mindset, is I was embarrassed a lot by my writing when I was younger. I was like, oh, I don't want people to read this scene. It's coming out of my head, but it's getting out of your comfort zone. People aren't going to judge you on your writing. You are not your author. You're not your character. And I was always afraid that people are going to judge me thinking I'm my character, and then they're going to judge me based on that. But I'm realizing as I'm reading, I don't judge people on their character. So I don't think about, oh, this author is this character. I mean, some situations maybe, but for the most part, no. And that also those rough drafts, they're just for your eyes. They get your mind going. And if there's a scene in there that you don't want anybody else to see, you write it down in your rough draft, take it out when you go to editing. But as long as you get that idea out there, you can tweak it. It's a lot easier to change something that's written than if it's nothing there.
I think you hit on something super important, the fact that it's a whole lot easier to delete than it is to add.
Yes.
So, yeah, it may take you a little bit longer. You may go into a lot more detail, but when it comes back, you mentioned earlier that this editor pulled a couple words out and changed the whole context of what the person.
Oh, yeah.
And so you may have a lot of detail, but it's not needed right then.
Yep, exactly.
But it may be needed in a future book. And so it's there, it's already written.
Yep.
It just gets pulled out and set aside for another time, if
Yeah.
that other time exists, or maybe that becomes the basis for something else that you want to go down a different road. So it's
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
a
I know
lot
I
of
have
things.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I was gonna say I have a document on my a Word document where I call it just random scenes. And so if there's something that I didn't want in the first book, I've already written it. I take it out, I copy and paste it here and say, this is the scene from, I thought I was going to use it in first book. This is what's happening. And then I've got the scene.
Well, that was worth the price of admission today, because that you spent the intellectual property to get it down in writing, and now
Yeah.
you're saving it for a future time when I don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, I like that a lot. That I think you're the first person that's come up and mentioned the fact that they save those little cuts
Mhm.
uh, in an organized way that you can go back and reference them later on.
Yes. And another thing I suppose I would mention to new readers is that spell checker is not your friend. You do need another set of eyes. I had an incident in my first book when it was being edited where my character was going to go out and assess the situation, but I missed one of the S's at the end and it was spelled correctly. So spell checker didn't flag it, but my editor caught it and said, multiple donkeys. So yeah, spell checker is not your friend.
Um, I find that Word, when you have the document read back to you, I can sit there and watch the little yellow brick road go across the
Yes.
document and hear it. And even though I've read the thing 4 times,
Yeah.
it's not what I wanted to say, or it doesn't sound right. There's just
Yeah.
something peculiar about it. And so that read back function on Microsoft Word is great. AI, I didn't ask you about AI, but AI and editing can be of immense help, but it's extremely difficult to get the right queries so you're not destroying what you already have. I mean, the first time
Yes.
I ever did that, I put about 20 pages in there, and it edited down to 2 paragraphs. You
Yeah.
know, what happened to the other 19 pages? I was just I
Yes.
used the wrong words. If I said edit for spelling, I'd been fine.
Mhm.
Or edit, but and then sometimes I'll say proof for 7th grade level because I write very technically. I want to make sure that I have something that's understandable. And so there's a
Mhm.
lot of things that we can do, but AI tends to be very sterile, and you need a little bit more humanity back into some of that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a tool, just like a dictionary, just like a thesaurus. I know that recently having been diagnosed also with dyslexia, I tend to have difficulties with spelling, and I miss a lot of those little words like to and and the, and I did not realize how bad it was, and so I I was relying on Word to catch those, and then words, a grammar checker is not that great. So I started using Grammarly, and then I realized I'm missing a lot of those little words just because I can't see them. And so I found that that's an effective tool for me because of that.
Yeah. My favorite dyslexic joke is, did you hear about the dyslexic atheist who didn't believe in a dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting ready to wrap up the show. How do people get in touch with you? How do they buy your books? Do you have any events coming up that you're going to be at? Tell
Yeah.
the world here, Jennifer.
Yeah, so everything's on my website, www.jmshawauthor.com. I've got links on the bottom to my Facebook and Instagram. I've got a link to Goodreads. My books are all listed there. You can read all about them. There's links to them on Amazon, my .ca and .com. My first 2 books are also on Kobo and Barnes and Noble if you're in the US. And my third and fourth book will be on there eventually. But there's links there. I've also got an events page on my website, what'll tell you where I'm going to be and what I'm doing. A lot of book signings, and I'm going to be branching out into other events and such. It's fun. I mean, who doesn't want to go out and talk about their passion, and talk all about themselves and what they love to do. So I'm also loving to read and loving to meet all these readers and stuff, again, hearing their feedback. And I'm getting people coming back and finding me at my book signings. They're like, I loved your first 2 books. Now I want to get your third and your fourth. And can you sign the ones that I bought online? Or they've told me that they're following me on my Facebook or Instagram.
Of the Facebook and Instagram, which is the one you're on most?
Well, I'm on both of them. But most of my videos, like if I post a link to a video like a podcast and such, it's more likely to show up on Facebook. So I say follow me on both. I do have an email through my website. You can subscribe to my email list and stuff. And I don't send out lots of email mass emails because, like, unless something really important is happening, because I'm still learning that process too.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so very much for your time today. I really and truly enjoyed it, and I look forward to our next one. And maybe that'll be when you have your 5th book out there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
take care, enjoy, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Red O'Loughlin here on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Jennifer Shaw was our guest today, author of the Jacalyn Walker series. Normally, I'd be telling you about the Wise Ones, the next show. We had some technical difficulties today with that particular program, even though it's live streaming, things happen in the background regardless. So we're going to jump right over to Talking Heads immediately following the show in about 23 minutes. And my show today is essentially fighting aging. What are the processes in the body that cause us to age, and what options do we have? Last week I talked about foods and aging and kind of went into a lot of detail about what choices you have, good or bad. But this is the rest of the story. What are those other things besides eating that has an impact on what we look, how we feel, how we act, how we think? So that and many other things with regard to aging will be coming up. Take care, y'all. Catch you later. Bye now.
USA Global TV and Radio, home of the YouTube Silver Creator Award, proudly presents Just the Thing for Your Ring, introducing the patented Ring Thing. Your premium personal ring holder to keep your ring safe, nearby, and avoid loss.
The Ring Thing just got smarter. Add your logo and an NFC tag that opens to your website with one tap. Waterproof, inner padding, and now a forever business card.
Just the thing for your ring. Scan the QR code seen here to learn more about Ring Thing or place your order. Follow Ring Thing on Instagram at ring_thing_ or go to our website ringthing.com.
In a world craving connection, one platform dared to dream bigger. USA Global TV and Radio, a beacon for global voices, authentic storytelling, and elevated listening. Led by visionary Dr. Jacalyn, the journey from a spark to a global force is now captured in one inspiring book. Honored with YouTube's Silver Creator Award for surpassing 100,000 subscribers. Discover the evolution, the challenges, the triumphs, and the unstoppable spirit that created a global movement. Executive producer Dr. Jacalyn, music score by Yeffy Tang, creative director Paul Garcia. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Now an Amazon #1 new release in paperback and ebook. Broadcasting Brilliance, the evolution of USA Global TV and Radio, is inspiring readers around the world. Join the movement that's redefining global media one story at a time.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/usaglobaltv. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dies. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.